Welcome. Here we go back for another episode. We welcome you and thank you for joining us again. This week, we're going to address 5 relationship red flags men ignore. Do not ignore clear signs when the red flags are blowing and waving in the wind. A lot of men don't end up in bad relationships by accident. They ignore the sign. I want to thank you to the faithful that are joining us and staying on this journey with us in this community. But we're back and we're keeping it moving, addressing issues that are affecting our relationships and challenging us as men to build and grow successful, healthy kingdom connections and to build and develop real, lasting kingdom marriages and challenging our attitudes, our character, and affecting how we are navigating and how we're thinking and how we're seeking to move forward in our relationships. But we want to reclaim our leadership, our authority, and we want to fully take charge of our character, our integrity. The 5 that I want to share this week are the lack of respect, inconsistent behavior, poor communication, emotional manipulation, and no accountability. Why are we here? Do we understand the discernment that the Lord gives us when we read His Word, when we study His Word, when we apply His Word? Do we understand the signs and the signals that we get? Are we recognizing the red flags in our relationship, in our dating process to find the one? Our truth scripture for this week, I want to share Deuteronomy 32, verse 6. Do you require the Lord, O foolish people and unwise? Has He not made and established you? Let's think about that. In dating and relationships, we need clarity. We need clarity because we need true direction and proper guidance. In every polished, professional woman, as Proverbs 31 says, who can find a virtuous woman needs a man with clear direction. He needs to know where he's going and he needs clear identity. He needs to know who he is. And he needs to stand in confidence, giving that woman trust to feel safe and secure that he knows who he is and where he's going, so she knows that she can trust him to follow him in a healthy and safe direction, healthy and safe manner. lack of respect. She talks to you any kind of way and you let it slide because you don't want conflict. And I've been guilty of this my own self. I have been telling myself, misleading myself by telling myself and convincing myself I want to maintain peace. It'd be healthier and it'd be more peaceful if I don't address this or that. So sometimes I have allowed certain things to be said that should have been addressed. This is a clear red flag, especially before you get married, if you not already married. If you are married, then it's something that needs to be addressed. You got to walk in authority and confidence and make a time to sit down and address this area of concern, a lack of respect. That's a clear red flag. Inconsistent behavior. You keep hearing the words and they sound good, but the actions are not in alignment with the words you keep hearing. Inconsistent behavior. The actions must line up. Again, don't let this be an area where you convince yourself or you self talk yourself out of paying attention or addressing this issue early, challenging your mind to produce thoughts that you will see a change later on when you have clear, inconsistent behavior at the forefront. And you need to address it and get some clear answers before you move forward. Poor communication. Communication is a key foundation for every relationship. Um, some may even think that I should have put communication number one, but these are not necessarily in any direct order, but communication I put in the middle because usually we don't address communication effectively in the beginning, but it is a central point that everything else can be attached to and centered around. All communication is not healthy, nor is it always strengthening or building. Some communication can also tear down. While we're talking about communication being a key foundational building block for any relationship, we need to also understand that not all communication is good communication. We want to focus on if we're able to have adult conversations without always having conflict. Are we able to have positive resolution through communication? And are we understanding is the communication building up or tearing down? Not all communication is healthy. Not all communication strengthens and builds. Poor communication, a clear red flag. And we're not talking about language here or difference in language. We're talking about having an understanding in how we speak and what we hear, and whether the conversation is promoting, uplifting, and encouraging. Emotional manipulation. This is a powerful avenue because most women are heavily emotional. And in order for them to have deep relational connections, they have to be moved on a deeper emotional level than most men. But at the same time, women can be extremely manipulative, manipulation, extremely manipulative in the way they process their communication, their actions, and their thought. And sometimes without even having bad intentions, they steer the conversation, they steer the questions based on how they can seek to get responses and answers through the emotional strengths. Is it appealing to your feelings for your benefit, or is it an attempt to control your responses or your actions based on their emotions? This is what we want to watch out for as a red flag: emotional manipulation. Information, too, emotional manipulation is the conversation. Sometimes women live in the little girl in relationships, and they can throw temper tantrums. And those temper tantrums are also a form or a way of using their emotions to attempt to regain what they feel like is lost control. So sometimes emotional manipulation for women is a sense of being in control. But as a leader and a healthy man that knows his identity and knows his direction, can always understand the language and not fall into a woman's emotional manipulation patterns or her emotional control in her questions and language. And sometimes it's just silence. Sometimes it's just not feeding into those responses. You sit quiet and you let her know confidently that I am not going to be baited into responding to you based on emotional control. And last but not least, for this week's 5 red flags is no accountability. As men, we need to be accountable for our actions, and true leadership holds us to a high standard of accountability. And it states for us that being accountable should be a regular, everyday staple of our character, our integrity, and our life. We have to stand firm, stand strong, and be committed to be accountable to what we say, what we do, how we carry ourselves, how we act. Even when we fall short or we make a mistake not being clear, we need to own it and be accountable to it. And we're producing higher levels of respect and confidence in the women when we're showing them that we have a high level of accountability. In the process of seeking a wife, her actions also needs to show that she's being accountable. So if we're in the process of seeking to find a wife and we're seeing, like we was talking about earlier, that inconsistent behavior, we're seeing that she is not accountable before we get married. What makes us believe or come to a conclusion that we can change her or that she will change and be accountable after? Especially if we're hearing words and the actions and the words don't line up. The woman has to exemplify, reveal, and show signs and patterns of accountability. So the red flag to look for is there no accountability in her words, in her actions, in how she is looking at long term in this relationship. Ignorance is bliss, is a saying or cliche or term. We catch all these fancy terms and these fancy words and these cliches, and we can hold some comfort in saying, yeah, I was ignorant to the fact, I didn't know this or that, and I am okay with living in the excuses. But stupidity is where we take ignorance and we live in that ignorance beyond taking the action to develop the information that we didn't have. We may have not known, we have been ignorant, foolish, but ignorance gives us the opportunity to learn what we didn't know, to correct and to develop more knowledge and information, whereas stupidity takes us to a place to where we keep doing the same things over and over without learning what we didn't know, without correction. And then that stupidity leads us into insanity, which means now we have learned and we know better, but we still faithfully, consistently doing the thing like we were ignorant. But we're no longer ignorant. We're no longer stupid. We are now insane in repetition of doing the same things over. Or we can see the red flags. We can learn clear communication and understand if it's healthy or unhealthy communication, if it's building or tearing down. We can understand that there needs to be respect and deal with the areas of a lack of respect. We can recognize inconsistent behavior. We can deal with emotional manipulation and discern whether we're seeking to be controlled by emotions, and then we can have clear accountability, no longer living in excuses by ignorance. And we can ask ourselves the question, how long do I want to repeat unhealthy, unsuccessful, unproductive patterns? So, what actions do we take and what do we do? So, we have antennas, compass, and gauges. Antennas help us to increase our signal so we can get clearer reception, both to receive and to transmit communication in a more extended range or reach. So, our action is to make sure that we're testing and setting up our antennas for clearer reception, for better long term receiving and transmitting of healthy interaction and communication. And then the compass always points to true north, is a guide for us, even in this day and age of electronic and digital GPS. A compass gives us a sense of understanding direction in our relationships, engaging if our relationships are heading true north in the proper alignment in the proper direction. And then we have the gauges. The gauges lets us know if we have proper balance. Is our relationships properly aligned and in a healthy balance? Without clear working gauges, we can't determine if it's too hot or too cold. The problem isn't that the signs weren't there, it's just that we weren't looking for them. We weren't paying attention, or we just ignored them. If you are new here, welcome to Real Men Real Talk presented by Hatchcat. Hopefully, you gain some insight and a little more clarity. Be sure to follow our community, follow our resources, subscribe, share, and leave your comments. For my faithful that has been here, thank you for continuing to stay a part of the community, for sharing these in your circle that you know needs this information and this community, and adding your value here. Let's check our compass if we're heading true north in our dating lives, in our relationships, in our marriages. Let's check our gauges that we are fully in balance and we know exactly when the relationship is getting too hot and too cold. And then we can bring everything back in balance, and let us check our antennas that we are positioned to get the strongest signals possible, and we're having healthy communication. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this. And let's leave here knowing that with the right gauges, the right compass, the right antenna, we know that we're going in the right direction, heading on the right path, and we in the right alignment with the Lord first and his word, and then in our kingdom connections. As always, peace and love. Hatch out.